Just moments ago, the world received confirmation of what military analysts had been whispering about for months, not speculating, not guessing, but quietly preparing for. Something decisive has happened. Inside the Kremlin, behind closed doors, away from cameras, microphones, and official statements. On January 23rd, Vladimir Putin delivered a message so blunt, so unfiltered, that it stunned even seasoned American negotiators. A message that redraws the limits of diplomacy. A message that explains why the war will not simply fade out. And a message that signals a fundamental shift in global power politics. Because in the heart of Moscow, Putin brought the Trump envoy back down to earth and made one thing unmistakably clear. Russia is not backing down. Not now, not later, not ever. And tonight, we are going to break down exactly what happened during 4 hours in the Kremlin, why intelligence chiefs from Russia and Ukraine are suddenly meeting face-to-face for the first time since 2022, and what kind of diplomatic revolution is quietly unfolding before our eyes. Stay until the end, because in the final minutes, we will explain why the Kremlin agreed to direct talks now, and what this moment could mean for the future of Europe itself. Chapter 1. The Atmosphere Inside the Kremlin, January 23rd, Moscow, the Kremlin. For nearly 4 hours, Vladimir Putin sat across from a high-level American delegation, Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and senior U.S. representatives acting as intermediaries. 4 hours is an eternity in diplomacy, especially when the sides officially disagree on everything. But this meeting wasn't about polite disagreements. It wasn't about gestures. And it certainly wasn't about compromise. It was about lines that cannot be crossed. According to insiders familiar with the discussion, the tone shifted early. When an unexpected topic entered the room. Greenland, yes, Greenland. When the subject of Donald Trump's renewed interest in Greenland was raised, his economic pressure on Denmark, his blunt territorial rhetoric, Putin did something rarely seen in formal negotiations. He smiled. Witnesses say the Russian president appeared genuinely animated, even amused, and then he delivered a sentence that changed the entire conversation. Ukraine is to us what Greenland is to you. A pause. We will not simply give it up. Everyone must understand that. That single analogy explains everything. Chapter 2. The Greenland Parallel. This wasn't rhetorical flair. It was strategic framing. Putin was drawing a direct parallel between American behavior in the Arctic and Russia's position in Eastern Europe. If Washington considers Greenland a matter of U.S. national security, if Trump is willing to threaten tariffs, pressure allies, and challenge NATO unity over it, then Moscow, Putin argued, has the same right to view Ukraine through the same lens, not as a bargaining chip, not as a negotiable asset, but as a core security interest. Russian officials later emphasized this point. The Greenland crisis, according to Moscow, is a preview of a deeper Western fracture. Trump pressures allies, threatens economic punishment, demands territorial concessions. And if the United States allows itself this logic, why should Russia abandon its own? From the Kremlin's perspective, compromise under pressure is no longer an option. Chapter 3. The Anchorage Formula. When the meeting concluded, Putin's foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov delivered the key takeaway, without ambiguity, without diplomatic padding, without resolving the territorial issue according to the Anchorage Formula. No lasting settlement is possible. The Anchorage Formula, discussed in earlier negotiation rounds, locks in Russia's territorial demands. Public details are scarce, but the implications are unmistakable. At minimum, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Crimea, possibly more. depending on security requirements. And here is the crucial point. There is no negotiation on these territories. Ushakov's message to Washington was crystal clear. Do not assume you can pressure Russia. Those days are over. According to insiders inside the presidential administration, Putin said it even more bluntly behind closed doors. Until we take what we originally planned to take, there will be no stopping this war. Let Trump understand that once and for all. No hints, no euphemisms, no diplomatic fog, just a red line. Chapter 4. The question everyone asked. So why did Putin spend 4 hours talking if nothing on territory was negotiable? Because territory is not the real issue. Security is. According to Ushakov, most of the meeting was spent on what diplomats call synchronizing. Watches. That phrase matters. It means alignment, coordination, and agreement on next steps. The American delegation brought detailed briefings from talks with Kiev, consultations with European leaders, Trump's proposed security guarantees for Ukraine, and Putin listened closely. What followed was not confrontation, but coordination. For the first time in 3 years, Moscow and Washington were not speaking past each other. They were calibrating actions. That alone represents a tectonic shift. Chapter 5. The Real Core, a New Security Architecture. Putin's objective goes far beyond land. He wants guarantees that Ukraine will never become an anti-Russian military platform. NATO infrastructure will not move closer to Russian borders. Any post-war settlement locks in long-term security. From Moscow's point of view, Western proposals, NATO membership, foreign troops, Israeli-style defense models, are unacceptable. They turn Ukraine into a permanent forward operating base against Russia. But something changed during the meeting. According to context clues in subsequent actions, the security proposals discussed between Trump and Zelensky were acceptable enough for Moscow to proceed, not publicly endorsed, but sufficient to move forward. And that leads us to the most shocking development of all. Chapter 6. The Abu Dhabi breakthrough already agreed, even before the Kremlin meeting, was something unprecedented. On January 23rd in Abu Dhabi, the first meeting of a trilateral security working group, Russia, United States, Ukraine. At the same time, a separate bilateral economic group, Russia and the United States only. On paper, this sounds bureaucratic. In reality, it is a diplomatic earthquake. These are the first full-scale direct official contacts between Moscow and Kyiv since early 2022. Not symbolic, not performative, real, and the choice of negotiators proves it. Chapter 7. Why Intelligence Chiefs Matter. Russia sent Admiral Igor Kostyukov, head of the GRU, Chief of Military Intelligence, a man who knows battlefield realities, operational limits, true losses on both sides. Ukraine sent Kirilo Budanov, the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, a figure Moscow labels a terrorist, a man who openly calls for Russia's destruction. These are not politicians. They don't trade slogans. They trade facts. When intelligence chiefs sit at the same table, it means one thing. The fantasy phase is over. Now comes reality. They can discuss actual military balance, verification mechanisms, ceasefire enforcement, security guarantees that actually work. This is not theater. This is groundwork. Chapter 8. The Two-Level Strategy. Notice the structure. Security talks, Russia, U.S. Ukraine economic talks, Russia, U.S.-only sanctions, trade, reconstruction, compensation. This reveals the strategy. Moscow and Washington build the framework. Ukraine is invited, but not in control. Kyiv faces a choice. Accept the framework or remain outside the process. That alone explains the urgency. Sounding nested 9. Why this is happening now? So why now? Because Washington shifted? Trump, consumed with his own territorial logic, Greenland included, understands Putin's worldview. Spheres of influence, hard interests, security over ideology. For the first time in years, Moscow senses that Washington is ready to acknowledge Russian interests, not endorse them, but recognize them. That was enough. Sending the head of the GRU to negotiations is not public relations. It is commitment. The final chapter, Sapiens. What happens next, Abu Dhabi, is the test. If intelligence chiefs find common ground, talks escalate, foreign ministers step in, leaders may follow. If talks collapse, Russia returns to military solutions only. As Putin warned, the West must choose: recognize a new reality or continue confrontation with unpredictable consequences. Europe hesitates, Washington recalculates, and history shifts quietly. In conference rooms, not headlines. We are witnessing a diplomatic revolution in slow motion, and the next weeks will decide whether this war moves toward settlement or toward something far darker.